honor to be here. And for the few of you that haven't asked me yet, I'm 6'9", and yes, I do play basketball. So, but not as good as I used to. I started my career as a social entrepreneur, working as a missionary in Portugal, supporting myself playing with the basketball team there, and then working with missionaries there. And yeah, that was a few years ago. I've been with Dr. Ed Silvoso in an organization called Transform Our World. It's been based here in the Bay Area for 38 years. Dr. Ed Silvoso is from Argentina. He's the best-selling author of several books, including Anointed for Business, Transformation, and his latest, Ecclesia. And he's generally regarded by, well, I regard him as such, as the father of the marketplace transformation movement. So that's a little bit of who I am. And what do? We're, it's Transform Our World because it's our Father who is in heaven. It's his, it's us, it's all of us together, and it's us together. And what do? Well, I describe it depending on the audience, but I basically go around talking to Christians, kicking them in the backside and saying, get off the seat on Sunday and go out and make a difference in our world Monday through Saturday. Let's go out and change the world. Amen? Amen. So what is systemic poverty? My desire is to help you walk through a paradigm shift. It's important that we change our thinking. So I want to, first of all, give a definition of systemic poverty. This comes out of Ed Silvoso's book, Transformation. And he says it better than I could, unless I quote him, then I can say it pretty well. Systemic poverty is an all-encompassing social economic structure that keeps people deprived. It exists because of an institutionalized attitude that legitimizes the twin evil premises that one, some people deserve more opportunity than others, and that two, there is not much that can or should be done about this prevailing social injustice, similar to how slavery was justified in the past. Because this evil is systemic, it will not be eradicated by simply taking care of individuals at the micro level or providing massive aid at the macro level. It must be uprooted. But before something can be uprooted, we have to face it. We have to see it, and we have to acknowledge it. I think we would all agree, after you read this definition, that systemic poverty and systems of poverty exist. We'd all agree with that, right? But I'm not sure if we understand that we're living in one. I'm not sure if we understand that our system has elements of systemic poverty. So before I get there, though, I want you to shift your understanding of poverty, because generally when we think of poverty, we think of financial poverty, okay? But Ed Silvoso provides a much more in-depth, multidimensional understanding of poverty. That poverty is not just financial, it's also motivational. But it's not just financial and motivational, it's relational and it's spiritual. This is really important because how you define a problem defines the outcomes. And if we can understand that poverty is more than just financial, and that someone can have all the money in the world and still be deeply, deeply broken, deeply lost, spiritually poor, relationally poor. And in fact, sometimes when you have a whole bunch of money, you're very relationally poor because that money becomes an isolation. And if we can understand that, that will lay a groundwork for us to have solutions. So the big question is, does systemic poverty exist in the U.S.? Okay, well, I was going to help you come to that conclusion. All right, I finished my talk early. Americans want to believe that everyone is capable of upward mobility, giving enough effort on his or her part, and this assumption forms a part of the national collective self-image. And I would put that out there to say that that is categorically wrong, but before I get to that conclusion, which you already agree with me through, let's walk through. We understand slavery, systemic poverty, right? But then we had emancipation. Okay, great. No longer any slaves. But then we can look back historically, and it didn't take long for the legalized slavery was outlawed, everybody was set free, that then we put in a different system, Jim Crow. And was Jim Crow better than slavery? Was Jim Crow worse than slavery? Well, I mean, the slaves were not being lynched under slavery. They were being lynched under Jim Crow. Okay, but then we had the civil rights movement, and that changed all the Jim Crow laws, right? So why isn't everyone happy? I want to bring before you one stat. I was actually a math major in college. Numbers, how many math majors here? How many engineers? How many engineers? All right, it's Google, everyone's an engineer. The numbers don't lie. This one stat, to me, could have been the whole subject of my talk. If you don't think systemic poverty exists in the U.S., for boys born in 2001, that means boys who are 18 right now, the lifetime probability of being incarcerated in the U.S. is estimated to be 32% for young black men. 1 in 3. 17% for Latinos and 6% for whites. No, I don't think, this is the Bay Area, I don't think anybody agrees that there's a genetic reason for this. Okay, so this number to me tells the whole story, and we have to face the beast. There is systemic poverty right underneath our noses. And somebody says, this was kind of fun because, you know, now with the internet, we have bogus quotes all over. But I mean, I want to call this a bogus quote. It's great. It's just nobody knows who actually said it first. So the attribution is disputed. But every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. So I would submit to you that there's a systemic reason that is driving that stat and others. So why? What is it? Well, the first thing I want you to see, slavery came to emancipation, but after emancipation, Jim Crow laws. Okay, the Jim Crow laws were wiped out through the civil rights movement. So it's now no longer legal to discriminate against people on the basis of race, creed, color. Okay, but I would submit to you that what is called our war on drugs and our system of mass incarceration has replaced Jim Crow in a similar way that Jim Crow replaced slavery, okay? So Nicole said that not all the talks would be so heavy, but sometimes it has to get heavier before it gets light, okay? And I'm putting these big question marks because, first of all, you talk to an African American, you talk to Nicole, you talk to Nancy Harden, who's my African American spiritual mom who lives is from Oakland. She's 88 now, I think. And you talk to an African American, and I say the war on drugs and mass incarceration, they're believers, you know, Christians, they immediately understand what we're talking about, okay? If I talk to a white Republican Christian, if I start talking about systemic poverty, they'll say abortion, yeah, you know, and that's an evil, and we have to outlaw it, and I'm totally pro-life. I don't think that we should kill babies, okay? And it's scientific, well, whatever, that's not the subject of my talk. I'm saying whites understand this, but you talk to them about the war on drugs and mass incarceration, and it's like a deer in the headlights. They have no idea what I'm talking about, okay? But the premise I'm putting before you is that our war on drugs, what's called the war on drugs and mass incarceration, has replaced Jim Crow in a similar way that Jim Crow replaced the civil rights, okay? So it replaced slavery, all right? It's a social system that's all invasive, and it's systemic poverty. So how does the system work? Before we get to that, first of all, I wanted to touch on something of language, that you can understand how people are born into the system and predisposed to this. And it lives in our values that are expressed through our language. This is another place. This comes from Bridges Out of Poverty, a beautiful book. They have an incredible curriculum. I really love the intellectual property that they've developed. Okay, but we're a class society, and it's divided basically 3 classes. You have the poor, you have the middle class, and you have the wealthy. And these have different values, these have different languages. Not go into depth about that, but someone who is born into a professional, wealthy family, between the ages of 1 and 3, they are going to be exposed to 30 million words. That predisposes them, that hardwires their body to go into school and prepare them for school, okay? And for success. The poor in welfare, that area, they're going to be exposed to 10 million words, so a third. Okay, but that's not the big driver, all right? The biggest driver is what type of words are they exposed to. The wealthy correct their kids. They say 5 affirming things for every 1 corrective thing. It's a good stat to remember. Every time this is in work or everywhere, they will say 5 good things for every corrective thing. In the poor classes, there's 1 good thing for every 2 negative things. But it goes deeper than that. What the poor are being exposed to is you're always going to be poor. You're never going to amount to anything. You're just trash. You're going to end up like your old man. Where the rich are being exposed to, you're going to succeed. You're going to go work at Google. You're going to go be a doctor. Foster care drives. So moving on, I want to go build beyond that. They're born into this. If you're born into the foster care system, there's a stats I want you to show. But basically, to summarize it, the way that they project how many beds they're going to need in prison 5 or 10 years down the road is they look at how many kids are in foster care right now. And they say those kids are going to go into juvenile hall, and they make financial projections on that. Okay? How does this system work? All right? We've all heard the beautiful movie, The Scarlet Letter, or the book, The Scarlet Letter, and how you are branded by that, and that followed you the rest of your life. Okay? Basically, you're predisposed if you're born into a low-class family. And all of our corporate, the bulk of our corporate law enforcement dollars are focused on poor areas. Now, drug use is normal throughout. In fact, all ethnic groups, all financial groups use drugs about the same, but our law enforcement is against the poor. So if you do random searches, you're going to find those violators, all right? And then they're brought into the system. So we're primarily fishing out of those areas. That every step along the way, the system is prejudiced against the poor and against the colored, okay? And so if you recruit them all, and then we put them into the system, and as soon as they get into the system, it's like a highway to go to the next step and to the next step. And then once you get into prison, as soon as you get the felon, that follows you around for the rest of your life. The best way to understand this is watch a movie called Ant-Man. How many of you seen Ant-Man? The intro is so funny because he's this brilliant white guy. He's a genius. He got into crime. He was in prison. He wants to turn his life around. Now he gets out and he's trying to get a job. And everywhere he goes, he marks the box that he's a felon, and he gets turned down, turned down, turned down. He finally hits the end of his rope, and he lies to get a job at Baskin-Robbins. And then the real funny part is when the night manager at Baskin-Robbins fires him because Baskin-Robbins has found out. And it's hilarious. I'm laughing, and then I'm crying inside, and I'm saying, I'm so glad they're showing this in a funny way because that's the reality. And it follows you around like a scarlet letter. So I've got to wrap up very quickly. We also added to this a prison industrial complex, which is a $5 billion industry. 9% of our inmates are actually incarcerated by private industries, okay? Now, that's only 9%, which is a $5 billion industry. I'm not trying to be a sensationalist, but as soon as you attach a financial motivation, a profit motive to a certain outcome, you are reinforcing that behavior. So now we have lobbying interests that are interested in the outcome of more people in the system. So where are the fathers? We love to pontificate and point the finger, and this actually comes out of the book, The New Jim Crow. This is not a politically right statement. This was written during the time of Obama. But one of the things that touched me the most, she's saying, we like to say, where are the fathers? Where are the fathers? You know, fathers rise up and speak at minorities and point the finger at them. She says, I'll tell you where the fathers are at. In fact, I'll show you. If you want to come join me, let's go to San Quentin, and I'll show you where the African-American fathers are at. You'll see them there. You walk in there and you see a face. It's obvious that our prison system is overwhelmingly comprised of minorities. We're locking them up. The system is stacked against them. Okay, this only happens nationwide. We don't have to worry about it locally in the Bay Area. How many of you know this poorest state in the U.S.? We're talking about per capita people living under the rate of poverty. How many of you know which state it is? Wrong. What? California. If you adjust for the cost of living, which is, we would all agree, is the true poverty rate. Because of the high cost of living, California has the highest poverty rate of any state in the union. And we're not talking about the Central Valley where there is abject poverty. We're talking about right here in Silicon Valley. Food insecurity nationwide is about 1 in 8 households. In the Bay Area, it's 1 in 4, double the national average. Homelessness, I just heard this at church on Sunday. Displaced persons. These are both homeless and people who are sheltered but don't have a home. The county that has the highest rate of homelessness in the U.S., take a guess. You're in it right now. Zip code 95123. I was working with YMCA and school lunches during the summer. My zip code, that's why I put it up there. In my zip code, this is the face of poverty. They're feeding lunches in the summer when schools shut down because you have a single mom. In my zip code, where the house next door is like $900,000 to buy, okay? During the summer, she's working multiple jobs, so her kids aren't cared for. She doesn't have money for childcare, okay? You have a 6-year-old watching a 3-year-old, and they have chips to eat all day. That's the face of what poverty looks like. Why should I care? Well, I think you all care already. The first one, obedience. It's interesting, this passage we're all aware with. The line that Jesus draws to say if you're in or you're out isn't your doctrine. It isn't any of that. It says, did you put your money where your mouth is? And this is how I tear it. You did it for me if you visited the inmates, if you cared for the widows, if you cared for the orphans. That's pretty high, okay? I would like to twist that a little bit, though. For by grace you have been saved through faith, that not of yourself, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. We don't really understand the privilege that we have. Can we really, really understand that everything I have is by grace? I tell you, what will happen if you do that? God will entrust you with way more. I believe that out of the Christian community in the Bay Area, the Lord is going to raise up people that are so blessed, so wealthy, some of the wealthiest people in the world that are going to make Bill Gates look like, just starting out. If we lay hold of this, if we really understand that everything I was given was by grace, but the flip side of it is I'm no better than anybody else. I play basketball and we go into San Quentin, and it's just there Saturday. So I got the inmates praying for me because I was really nervous that I wouldn't be able to fit my talk into 20 minutes. But they're praying that I'll end real quick. I tell them over and over, I don't come up here for you. I come up here for me. Because understanding that they're people, understanding the grace that's been given to me, and their prayers. I mean, I want to take some of these high-profile super Christians, mega rock star ministers, and drag them out to the prison and say, hey, look that guy in the eyes and say what you just said on social media. It's for us. The other one is hope. We can change things. If we can face it, we can change things. And I could go on with beautiful stories about how we're doing things. Michael's Transportation in Vallejo. Ed talks about this in Ecclesia. So get the book or come to our global conference. You can meet them. They have a program, and I love empathy versus compassion. They empathize with the reentry program. And they're believers. They've turned their business into a company, and they have a program. They're reaching out to the parolees, the reentry population. And because they empathize and because they're businessmen, everybody else sees a problem, just has compassion, and sees a problem that maybe they can fix when they get around it. They say, this is a business opportunity. The world needs truck drivers. The world needs commercial drivers, so they're training them. And they've been doing this program for about 5 years. They've trained 200 plus inmates. And over this course of 5 years, they've had 100% success rate in training them all, 100% success rate in job placement, and 100% success rate in that there's been 0% recidivism. That's compared to 80% across the board. Okay? The other is wisdom. Our future is at stake. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Folks, if we don't address this issue, one, Christianity, if it doesn't have a real hard look And if we don't lead with these people and with solutions, and I'm not talking about pointing the finger at anybody. I'm not talking about finding somebody else to blame and getting angry. I'm talking about being broken and realizing that we have to be part of the solution. But if we're not willing to look these hard problems in the face, if we're not really willing to realize, Jesus said that we should be united, and we're not. And we're not united. We're divided the way our nation is divided. Republicans and Democrats. Ethnic Christians are Democrats. White Christians are Republicans. And we're as divided as the world. If we don't lead this way, I'll tell you what, Christianity is going to be irrelevant. And I believe we have an opportunity out of the Bay Area, the least churched area in our nation, to see a revival that's going to reawaken our nation. But the other thing, do not be deceived, God is not mocked. The way that we are heading, our nation is so divided, it is going to get worse and worse and worse. Now is our opportunity. I want us to see this as a market opportunity. When I'm in meetings like this, and people tell me from around the world, you're a missionary to the Bay Area, they feel sorry for me. It's the least churched area of our nation. And I say, we might be the least churched area of our nation, but I'll tell you, the Holy Spirit is alive and well. And I hear this type of Christianity, and I say, those people out there, whoever those are, that don't like Jesus, they don't like religion, but they are so hungry for this. I believe this is an opportunity that if we get this together, if we can really stand side by side, if I can say some stuff as a tall white guy who grew up in a privileged home that only Nicole would say, that people might listen to me because I'm saying it differently. And if then she can say some stuff that people won't listen to me because that's what they always hear. And if we can hold hands together and really be united, I believe we can to have an impact that is going to change this region, is going to change our nation. But if we don't think you're going to be exempt. Because as they say, the direction we're headed is not good. I didn't say what they say because I didn't think it's appropriate. I'm saying, trying to end, the direction we're headed as a nation is for some very hard time. We're at an Esther moment. So let's go for it. All right?